I've never been a paranoid person. I've always loved traveling, discovering new places, and when my husband suggested a secluded house for our honeymoon, I thought it was perfect. Something more intimate, away from the chaos of crowded resorts. The house was beautiful, surrounded by tall trees, with a huge porch and a well-kept garden. The host welcomed us quickly, and then left us to our own devices. The only permanent staff on the property was the gardener, a man in his early 50s, thin, with a somewhat introspective demeanor, but always polite. On the first day, he appeared a few times, trimming bushes, sweeping leaves, and even gave us some suggestions about where to go for a walk. Up until then, nothing strange. But as the hours went by, I started to notice that he was around with a strange frequency. Every time we went out onto the porch, he was there, pretending to tidy something. If we walked around the yard, within minutes, he'd show up, smiling and offering suggestions for activities, restaurants, tourist spots. I found it a bit invasive, but my husband didn't seem to mind. "He's just a nice old man," he said. But something about the way the gardener looked at me, as if he was always waiting for my reaction, started to truly bother me. On the second night, I woke up in the middle of the night with the odd feeling of being watched. The house was silent, except for the wind rustling the trees outside. I turned to my side and saw my husband sleeping soundly. I tried to ignore it, but for some reason, the image of the gardener came to my mind. That constant presence during the day, the strange smiles, the advice that always seemed directed at me. I got up slowly and went to the bedroom window. My eyes took a few seconds to adjust to the darkness, but then I saw it. In the garden, near the gate, a motionless silhouette. It was him, just standing there, staring at the house. I went back to bed, trying to convince myself that maybe it was just my imagination, that he might have a legitimate reason to be out there. Maybe he was checking something. Maybe he was about to leave. But something didn't make sense. He wasn't moving. He was just there, staring at the house. My stomach twisted. My first instinct was to wake my husband, but I felt kind of ridiculous. What would I say? I think the gardener is watching our house. So I stayed there motionless, waiting to see what would happen. After a few minutes, he simply turned and disappeared into the darkness. The next morning, I tried to ignore what had happened, but the feeling of unease wouldn't leave me. When my husband woke up, I made sure to talk about the gardener, trying subtly to express how I was feeling without seeming paranoid. He smiled, thought it was funny, and said that the man was probably just being polite, concerned about our stay. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. After breakfast, we decided to take a walk around the property, trying to relax. Along the way, the gardener appeared again, as cheerful as ever, offering suggestions on where we could spend the rest of the morning. He knew exactly where we were going, suggesting that we take a walk through the more secluded part of the property, near the old tool shed. I, wanting to avoid confrontation, simply thanked him and kept walking with my husband, but inside me, something was building up, a feeling that we couldn't trust anything about this place. In the afternoon, I decided I needed to be alone for a while. I needed answers. While my husband rested, I took the opportunity to explore the house and the surroundings. The tool shed seemed like the best option. When I got there, the door was ajar, and as I carefully pushed it open, a feeling of strangeness took over me. Inside, I found something I couldn't understand: hidden cameras in strategic spots around the room and an old computer on a dusty table. With my heart racing, I approached the computer, and when I turned it on, the screen lit up with a series of videos. They were of other couples who had stayed there before us, and I soon realized that the videos weren't just of innocent moments. They captured the couples in private moments, in bed, in the shower, in their most intimate moments. My stomach turned, and a growing panic took over me. Terror overtook me. I didn't know whether to cry, scream, or run out of that house. The only thing I could do was stare at the screen, trying to understand what was happening. Each video was more disturbing than the last. It was as if the gardener had observed and recorded every detail of these couples' lives, and it seemed like he was trying to do the same with us. But in each recording, something stood out. He was always behind the cameras in a discreet corner, like a spectator who was watching but also felt part of the moment. My heart pounded, and I knew I needed to act. With trembling hands, I turned off the computer and ran to the door. The moment I stepped out of the tool shed, the gardener was there, standing at the entrance with a strange smile, as if he knew exactly what I had just discovered. He didn't seem surprised or scared. He just watched, as if everything was part of a plan he had orchestrated a long time ago. I couldn't say anything. Fear paralyzed me. The gardener simply approached slowly and said, "I just wanted to make sure you were happy like the other brides." At that moment, my world turned upside down. I didn't know what else he had planned or what he would do next. I only knew that we weren't safe there anymore. I ran to my husband, who was in the living room of the house. It was clear that he knew nothing about what had happened. With a look of panic on my face, I told him everything. He didn't believe me at first, but as I kept explaining, he started to understand the gravity of the situation. We decided we wouldn't stay in that house for another night. The most terrifying thing, though, was that while we were hurriedly leaving, the gardener was standing by the window of the house, watching silently, as if he was waiting. As if he knew that this had already become part of his routine. To this day, we can't understand how that happened. We never went back to that area, and we never tried to find out about the gardener or if other brides had gone through the same thing. The only thing we know is that night, our honeymoon turned into a nightmare that we will never forget. When my husband and I decided to rent this remote beach house, we imagined it would be the perfect weekend. The house was beautiful, far from everything, and the idea of having a place just for us by the sea, away from the distractions of the world, seemed ideal. The owner of the property told us he had a chef who offered an exclusive private dining experience for guests. I thought it was curious, but my husband was excited about the idea of not having to cook. On our first night, everything seemed perfect. The chef arrived, a smiling, polite man who greeted us as if he already knew us. He had a strange demeanor, as if he was waiting for something, but I thought it was just a peculiarity of his job. At first, the food seemed incredible. Each dish was tastier than the last, but there was something in the flavor I couldn't identify. It was as if the taste was exaggerated, too strong. I can't explain it exactly, but it felt odd, like something was off. Even so, my husband loved it. He was very entertained by the food and the conversation the chef was having with him. But what was most uncomfortable was realizing that the chef seemed to be paying more attention to us than he should. He kept watching us closely while we ate, asking questions about our preferences, our life together, details of our routine. I thought it was just to be polite, but the more he talked, the more uncomfortable I became. He was literally analyzing our reaction to each dish. One night, while I was alone in the house, I went to the kitchen to look for something to drink. When I passed by the dining room, I noticed the chef was standing in front of the window, staring directly at us. He didn't seem to be doing anything, just watching, and it gave me chills. After that, I started paying more attention to the details of the house, and that's when I made the discovery that changed everything. While checking the bathroom, I noticed a small wire coming out of the closet. I pulled it, and what I found made me freeze. It was a hidden microphone, camouflaged in one of the shelves. I couldn't understand. Was he listening to us? Scared, I began searching the entire house, looking for more of these devices. And I found them. They were everywhere. In the bedroom, the living room, even in the lounge, in corners I would never have imagined. The worst part was when I found a recorder, turned on, hidden underneath the dining table. The recorder was capturing every word we said, every personal and intimate conversation. I couldn't understand why. How did he know so much about us? How did he know the details we only talked about among ourselves? This made me think that maybe he had hidden cameras too, but I didn't have the courage to look any further. I was terrified. My husband and I didn't talk much about it at first, but with every dinner the chef prepared, he became more and more invasive, as if he was waiting for something, as if he was conducting some kind of experiment. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I didn't want to stay there any longer. In the end, I asked the property owner to cancel the rest of our stay. He just smiled, not giving much importance, as if he already knew what was happening. We left the house the next day, and we never spoke about it again, but the fear never left me. I know the chef knew too much. He knew what we wanted and what we were about to say, and I can't forget his look, always waiting. The scariest part is knowing that he may have done this with other couples before us, and who knows how many more will come. I'll never understand how that happened, but I'm sure it wasn't a coincidence. I never thought this weekend would turn into the worst of my life. It all started with the idea of getting some rest, you know? A group of friends and I decided to rent a secluded country house on a farm owned by a friend of a friend's family. It was the perfect place to escape the chaos of the city. The fresh air, the view of the countryside, it seemed like a dream. The house was in a remote location, and even the cell phone signal barely worked there. During the first few days, Everything was perfect, even more than we imagined. But as the hours passed, the peaceful atmosphere began to change. James, the owner, an older man, started making increasingly frequent nighttime visits. At first, I thought he was just a friendly guy who wanted to welcome us. He always told stories about the old inhabitants of the farm, tales of land and times long past, but something about the way he told them made me feel uncomfortable. On the third night, he showed up after our dinner. I was starting to wonder if he lived nearby, because he always seemed to be around. He came in without knocking, as if he were expected. He talked for more than an hour about how the old inhabitants liked to keep things in order, and how they were careful with every detail of the house. I had a strange feeling, but I didn't mention it to the others. I knew they were starting to feel uneasy too, but none of us wanted to be the first to say that something was wrong. But things only got worse from there. We started noticing objects disappearing from one place and reappearing in another. It was as if someone had been tampering with things, but without anyone noticing. We began to feel like we were being watched, and of course, no one wanted to admit it out loud. When we finally decided to investigate, what we found left us speechless. It was late when one of us, Lucas, went to the barn to grab some things and had the feeling that someone was watching him. He didn't say anything at the time, but he was visibly disturbed. The next morning, we decided to investigate the house from top to bottom. That's when we found something that changed everything. I was in the bedroom when I noticed a discreet camera in the corner of one of the shelves. It wasn't something out of a horror movie, just a regular camera, like the kind used for security. When I showed it to the others, we started looking for more, and to our surprise, we found cameras in several places around the house and even outside, as if someone had been watching us the whole time. The feeling of being watched didn't seem paranoid anymore, it was real. And the most disturbing part? All the cameras were connected to a single monitor. The monitor was in one of James's rooms. He wasn't home at the time, but we knew he was nearby, and that only heightened our anxiety. We became even more suspicious when we tried to confront him. We went to his house, but it was empty. There was no sign of James anywhere, just some old things scattered on the floor, as if he had left in a hurry. And the strangest thing, inside one of the furniture pieces, we found a pile of notes with personal details about us, as if he knew more about our lives than was possible for a stranger. Names of family members, places we had visited, even things we said to each other without thinking. We were completely stunned. How did he know all of this? He couldn't have, unless he was more than just a distant acquaintance of one of our friends' families. The atmosphere in the house became tense. We tried to leave, but there was something so sinister about the place that we could barely grab our things. We decided to leave as quickly as possible. We grabbed the car and started driving, but the feeling that something was still wrong didn't leave us. Something felt too off. I looked in the rearview mirrors, and with every bend in the road, it felt like someone was following us. But when we looked behind, there was nothing. Fear took over all of us, and we began speaking in low voices, as if somehow it would help us face the terror that seemed to grow inside our heads. The place, the house, James, everything felt like one big trap, but at the same time, we had no idea what was really happening. No one wanted to be the first to speak, but we all thought the same thing. How did he know about our lives? What did he want with all of this? And why did he mysteriously disappear after leaving the cameras? On the way back to the city, something still wouldn't let me rest. I couldn't stop thinking about the notes we found at his house. It didn't make sense. Everything was meticulously written, as if he had been watching us for a long time. It wasn't just what he knew about us, it was the way he knew details, small things, even insignificant things, that only people very close to us could know. The feeling of distrust was so strong that I couldn't sleep that night. I still felt like he was nearby watching us. When we got home, we tried to move on with our lives, but what happened at that farmhouse never left our heads. We didn't know exactly what had happened there, but the mystery of James and the cameras, those cameras we could never fully figure out, still haunt us to this day. In the following days, we tried to search for more information about the farm, about James, but no one knew anything. The person who had recommended the place seemed as surprised as we were when we talked about his strange behavior. However, one thing stuck with me. In one of our last conversations, she mentioned that James's family had lived there for generations. But, curiously, no one had appeared there in recent years. Since then, I felt that the place and its secrets were trapped in that land, as if something was waiting for someone to continue the cycle. Maybe that's what James had been trying to do, perpetuate what was happening there, something he had somehow already known. I still wonder what he really wanted, and why he never harmed us. The truth is that we'll never find the answers. What happened in that secluded country house was a mystery, and the feeling that something is always lurking, waiting, never left me. I think none of us really want to understand what happened there. What I know is that, after that weekend, the terror left a mark on all of us. I look back, and the only thing I can say is that there's something in that farmhouse that we can't explain, something that still haunts us, that we don't know whether it's real or just our minds trying to process the impossible.